It happens so fast. Before, um, so to move on with the story, they communicated with me as like a form of telepathic communication, and like that, it's hard for me to describe what that initial presence felt like. It was almost like I was so terrified that it's hard for me to describe it as like this divine love, but that's what it was.
Cheers, buddy. This is how we open this one, with a cheers.
Cheers, brother.
It's the only way to do it. Josh Abernathy, my brother, here we go, finally. I feel like this has been a long, long time coming.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that we're finally doing it.
Yeah. I feel like it needs a little bit of setup because you have an amazing story that I found out about it a while ago. And it's been this process of hoping that you're going to be willing to tell it someday.
Oh, I've been
And
willing to tell it, just on camera is a different story.
right, yeah, to tell the world. Not that my podcast is by any means the world, but you know what I mean. So, first of all, what is that change where you're now feeling more comfortable to open up about it?
That's a good question. I mean, I've been back and forth on the idea of, because we talk a lot about personal revelation and stuff like that. And I feel like this was very personal for me. And so when something is meant for you, it doesn't necessarily do you any benefit to share it. But at the same time, there's the argument of other people might have gone through something similar, and there is some traumatizing aspects to having experiences, and sometimes people need to hear from other people that they can relate to. Like, I had a similar experience, or something, something happened to me, and it's okay. Other people have went through it too, or I'm not crazy, that type of thing, and so yeah, I'm a little back and forth on telling my story, but I decided to do it, and hopefully in some way it helps
Mm,
somebody.
yeah, I think it's really important to share these personal stories that are real for that reason of it helping people who are in a similar situation where they've experienced something that's outside of what we consider to be normal, or um, I understand the personal aspect of not wanting to open up about some of these things. I'm in the same situation, and I find it easier myself to interview people about it and try to encourage other people to open up. And I'm slowly getting to that point of talking about those things that I've experienced, because we should be able to. You're talking about real, authentic experience, and we just keep it silent because of some, and in many cases, because of some social stigma
Fear.
or fear. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically it comes down to fear. And I mean, I haven't told a lot of people that are close to me, a lot of friends, a lot of family. There's some people that know that I've told my story to, but very, very few. And
Yeah. Can you identify some of those reasons that you feel fear?
um yeah, I mean, just the stigma, like you said, and just what other people are gonna think. You don't want people to think you're crazy. You don't want people to think you're weird. You don't want, uh, Um, and to be honest, before I had this experience, and I'm not afraid to admit this, I might have been one of those people that would have somebody told me a story like what happened, I would have been like, "Oh, okay, that's weird. Like, you must have been on drugs or you're hallucinating or you had a really weird dream or, something like that." I would have wrote it off. And
Yeah, yeah.
unless you actually experience something yourself, it's hard to understand. And with the social stigma around it, it's it's a lot easier to dismiss it than to try to understand or try to ask questions about it. It's easier just to say, "Oh, that didn't really happen."
Yeah,
And so that's a part of my fear too is why I haven't told a lot of friends and family is because I don't want them to look at me different or think I'm different or
mhm,
things like that. So
yeah,
even though I am a lot different because this entire thing changed my life dramatically. So
sure. Yeah. So before we get to the actual experience, can you provide some context about? I think we should start from the beginning of telling some people about yourself and set it up from before this experience happened to how your life up to that point.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I didn't grow up in a religious household. It was never really brought up. My family, my parents never went to church. My parents separated when I was 5, and yeah, I mean the only uh, religious part of my life was like going going with friends and their family to like a Easter event at their church or something like that. And I was very into science and sci-fi and very secular minded, um, and really loved space and astronomy. And yeah, and I was an average teenager, maybe a little bit on the more rebellious side than most. But I got in my fair share of trouble and yeah. Yeah.
You grew up in a household that was not religious, but you had some exposure
Yeah,
to.
very very little. Like I said, just there's probably I can count on both hands the number of times I went to church, growing up. Maybe even on one hand, it's probably close to that. And I remember one time going to church with some of my friends. Their family was really big into it, and they went to church like 3 times a week, and there was like a Easter thing that went to, and they invited me, and I was like, "All right, sure, I'll go and I'll check it out." And my memory from that experience was the adults were in like the main auditorium, and I have no idea what they were doing, and the kids went into the separate room that was down the hall, and we were playing board games, and it kind of struck me as odd because there was coffee, and I had never had coffee before, but that's like it was a kids room, right? It was like where they like a school type room, and so it just kind of I thought it was kind of odd. All the kids were drinking coffee, and I had never had coffee in my life, and I remember specifically like drinking coffee and feeling like, "Whoa, this is like crazy," And we're trying to play Jenga.
What?
And
How old were you?
I, I must have been like 9 or 10, somewhere around there. I think. it was, it was just and we were like coloring pictures of people from the Bible. I remember a picture of Jesus and I think Moses and things like that like the kids were coloring, and we were playing board games, and that's kind of my memory of that experience.
Mm,
There was another one I remember, and I never went for like an actual sermon or service. It was always like these different events. There was this other event where it was like a play and that they were putting on. And I kind of remember that, but like a lot of, I kind of tuned out because I didn't really know what was really going on. And
Mm,
um, yeah, those were kind of my experiences. And I do remember one time when I was younger, probably around the same time, or maybe even a little bit older, 11 or 12, and I asked my mom, and I was like, what religion are we? And she told me that we're Lutheran. And I said, well, what is Lutheran? What does that mean? And she's like, well, I don't really know, but I know that we believe in God. And that was pretty much the end of that conversation, and the only conversation I ever had with either one of my parents.
mm.
Up until more recently, I've had some pretty deep conversations with my mom, but during my childhood, that was about it.
So did you feel like you had big questions? Like, I know you're very scientifically minded still, but just curiosity even about the universe or where we come from and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did. And I definitely, had big questions about if I believed in God or not. It was something I thought about. Wasn't really something I talked about too often. I had questions about the universe, aliens, if we're alone, things like that. I really like to think about those types of things, but I didn't really talk that much. I did later in my teenage years get a group of friends who um, we did talk about some of those things when we were out camping around the campfire and things like that, and um, had some interesting conversations. But I would say for the most part, like I don't know, I wouldn't say I was like atheist because I didn't not believe in God, but I just didn't know, and I didn't have enough information to really make up my mind one way or the other. So I guess I'd probably be more agnostic, I guess.
Mm,
Um, but there were times in my life where I would look around the world and see what was going on and like, oh, there's no way God exists. God's not real. There's no way. So
yeah,
there were times where I was in that camp too. So yeah.
right. And then the incident or the experience that you had, how old were you when that happened?
I would have been 33, right around 33. Yeah. 30. Well, actually, wait, maybe 32, somewhere right around there, early 30s. You know, 31, 32, 33, somewhere right around there.
And before that, had you had any experiences that stood out as being really spiritually significant to you?
I would say no, like not really. Well, I guess what kind of led to me having that experience is I got to a place of really severe depression, and I got and I was in a pretty bad way. And there were times internally where I would just kind of reach out like, God, if you're real, like help me get through this, things like that. But nothing really came of it until I had this experience. And
Mm,
and so just to kind of jump in here I had a really good group of friends, a friend group that we'd all known each other since high school. And every Sunday we would do a Sunday dinner. And in the summertime, we would usually go and play beach volleyball all day and hang out and have a, barbecue and things like that. And then in the fall, we would all, usually it was always at my house. We would meet up and watch football all day and have a big dinner or barbecue and then have a poker game. And and that's where we were when this happened. Is We did that for years and years and years, and one night we're all just hanging out and been been having a good day and watching football and played poker. So everyone was hanging out, and then we played our poker game, and at the end of the night, everyone kind of went home. We cleaned up, did all that stuff, and yeah, that was the night I had my experience, and it changed my life forever. I went out into my garage and I sat down and I was just kind of chilling, and I was just like, wow, it was a great day. What happened today? And I'm just kind of sitting there, and I was probably sitting out there for about 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I feel like this presence enter my body. And when that happened, the very first reaction, I was absolutely terrified, right? I had no idea what was going on. It was just completely unexpected. My secular, scientific mind, wasn't anything that I had experienced, wasn't anything that I could explain. Was it was just I was just terrified, right? And
And sorry, what does that feel like? Like, what? I'm just trying to understand. You're sitting there out of the blue, and then you have this awareness of something happening to you.
yeah, it was like literally a 5-second thing, right? It happened so fast. Before, um, so to move on with the story, they communicated with me as like a form of telepathic communication, and that it's hard for me to describe what that initial presence felt like. It was almost like I was so terrified that it's hard for me to describe it as this divine love, but that's what it was. But it was terrifying to me, right? And it wasn't until that they spoke in my mind, and it's really it's really hard to put these things into words. I just don't know that we have the words to really describe it, but the best way I could do is it's not only it's not only like the feeling of a presence, but it's also like this intense, overwhelming connection and emotion and all the things, right? It's the whole realm of feeling, I guess.
Mm.
It's so hard to explain. And when they communicated with me, they're like basically like, it's okay, you can let go at any time, basically telling me, I can stop what was happening. And the presence that I felt, that's when I started recognizing what I was feeling, this overwhelming like love and blissfulness and gentleness, and I was being comforted and all these things, and like the fear just went away like immediately. And so like, I was just kind of like, then I'm just kind of weirded out, like what is happening? And they continued to speak with me, and they said that they wanted to give me an imprint, and they asked my permission, and they said, is it okay if we give you an imprint? And that's what they called it. I've heard a lot of people talk about downloads, but they specifically, said imprint. And I mean, again, I'm feeling this intense divine love presence, whatever. And at the time, like divine wasn't even in my vocabulary, right? Like I describe it now like that, but I mean, um, I wasn't thinking of anything divine or spiritual or anything like that. I was so confused. I had no idea what was happening. And I said, "Okay, you can give me this imprint." And then the next thing I know, like I'm just seeing all these things going through my mind, these mathematical equations and these images, and like just it was so fast, and there's so much I couldn't really understand. I couldn't really pick up. There was a couple little things that kind of stood out to me, but it wasn't any any way that was comprehensible or understandable to me at the time. And this lasted for probably maybe like 30 seconds. And then after it was over, and I'm just like completely, basically, I mean literally mind blown, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, what just happened? And they said, "We did this to help you, and we want you to talk to two people." And they gave me two names. And I'm just, for the rest of the story, because I haven't really talked to them about putting their names out there, or, associating them with this, but I'll just call them Bob and Lisa for now. Um, one of them you have met recently, and he would be a great person to for you to talk to. I think that would make for a great conversation. But yeah, and then it was over, and it was literally a minute, maybe two, this whole experience. And yeah, and my secular mind could not understand what had just happened.
Mm.
And my brain immediately went to aliens. Like, I did have an understanding of like UFOs, and I've never seen a UFO, never had any kind of experience of anything before that. But that's where my mind went. That was the only thing that I can really
Yeah.
make
You have to
make
assume
sense
your
of it.
mind is trying to grab on to anything it possibly can to make sense of what just happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I didn't sleep much that night, obviously, as you can imagine. And the next day my mind started going into government conspiracy, like MK Ultra, and like, I started immediately thinking of like those kinds of things. And then I was just like, there's no way that, definitely whatever that was doesn't resonate with any kind of human being that I ever have understood. I mean, they're like that kind of love and that kind of comfort, and those feelings and that blissfulness, that state that I was in, just didn't fit that narrative. And so that wasn't in my mind for too long. I mean, it was just like that didn't make sense to me. And yeah, I mean, I really didn't do anything with it. I thought about it all the time, but I never told anybody. Never, you know, it was a long time before I finally broke down and told Bob. Um, and it was like 6 months later, and I had expected my friend Bob, who I hadn't really seen in like years. We weren't really close. We used to be close. He wasn't around for a lot of our Sunday dinners and all that. Every once in a while he would show up, but it was like maybe like once a year or once every other year. I didn't see him too often. But I mean, he was a good friend since high school. And so like anytime we'd see each other, we were always close, right? We are always good friends. Um and it was actually after one of our other friends had passed away. We had a funeral, and then everyone kind of came over to my house and we hung out. And then later that night, we went over to another friend's house. and we were kind of hanging out on the back porch, and we had been drinking a little bit. And he brought up something, I can't remember what it was, but it was like I just I had drinking enough to where it was like, and he had brought up something, and I was like, okay, if I'm ever gonna tell him, this is it, right? This is the time. And so when I'm thinking he's gonna think I'm wacko, he's gonna think I'm nuts. This is not gonna go good, but I'm just gonna tell him. And so I started telling him what happened to me, and he just got so excited, and his eyes lit up, and he's like, "Oh my god," and he really was wanting to know more and asking the right questions, and relating to experiences that he had had in the recent years, and man, we really really hit it off and started talking to each other like every single day after that. Um, it started opening me up to, um, when something like that happens and you don't talk to anybody about it, or you don't have anybody to talk to about it, and you're just internalizing it yourself, right? The only things that you can really think of to try to make sense of it are what you already know. But when you talk about it with somebody else who you're comfortable talking about it with, they can give you different perspectives, different ideas, different advice. And that's kind of what happened between both of us, is we just really started having some really deep, profound,
Mm.
awesome, amazing conversations. And I at that point I still really thought like whatever happened to me, this had something to do with aliens. That just
Yeah. Did you have any self-doubts about it, that
um
you
yes.
questioned whether that happened?
Yes. I mean, not immediately, not like that night or the next day when I was kind of considering it was like some kind of government thing or something like that. But shortly after that, I started considering other options, like, was it just some kind of mental break or something, some kind of lucid vivid dream or hallucination or something, those kinds of things. And but none of that ever really stuck. I mean, it was just like, no, I know what happened, that I experienced, that was real. And actually it's kind of interesting because there was a point, as more time went on, and like the memory and the feelings, the remembrance of the feelings of that experience, they start to fade a little bit, right? And so then it becomes easier to question. But yeah, I mean, I never really, there was times where I questioned it a little bit, but it just never stuck, because it's like, no, I know what happened. I mean, that was unexplainable. There was a time shortly after, though, that I really did kind of consider like some kind of a medical episode, like a stroke or something like that, things like that. But I mean, obviously there's other things that come with things like that that just weren't there. And yeah, so
Right.
none of that,
And
none of that made sense.
as part of that experience, you were told the two names,
Mhm.
Bob and Lisa,
Yeah,
or
and I
not
was,
really Bob and Lisa, but for
yeah, I was, yeah. And I was specifically told that one was a seer and one was a healer, and that's how it was explained to me. And Bob, this person that I told, was the one who was the seer. And yeah, and so like I said, we were having these deep, uh, conversations for weeks, maybe even longer. I'm not really sure on all of the timelines, but I am. So this is kind of like the time that I do know. This was 2010. I don't think I mentioned that. So this is in 2010, and and then it was like 6 months later when I talked to him. So now we're into 2011, and in one of our conversations, he asked me a question, and I'll never forget this question because it was a question that changed my life forever. He said, "Have you ever heard of this thing called the alien Bible?" And I said, "No, I have no idea what that is." And he's like, "That's not what it's really called, but I can't remember the name of it, but yeah." He's like, "You should see if you can look into that or find out about it." And I was like, "Okay." And I didn't really have any more information to go on than that. So I don't know what I was gonna do to find out. But he ended up calling me the next day, and he's like, "I remembered the name. It's called the Urantia Book." And I was like, "Okay." Like, still, I was like, "That doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what I don't I don't know what that is." I was like, "Where can I read it? Where can I get a copy?" Like, I'm interested. It's, if you're calling it the Alien Bible, that sounds interesting. I'm curious. And and so I called Barnes and Noble, and I asked them if they had a copy of this book called The Urantia Book, and they did. And so I was stuck at home, and I didn't have a car at the time, and I was like, "Hey, why don't you cruise over and, right on your way is Barnes and Noble, pick me up this book. I'll give you cash when you get here, I really want to read it." And so he did, and I'm expecting like 20 bucks, right? It was freaking 60 bucks. I was like, "What? I just paid 60 bucks for this freaking book." And then he hands it to me as this giant freaking tome, and I'm just like, "What the hell is this?" Right? Like, what did I just pay $60 for? Like, $60 was a lot to me at the time. 20 bucks I would have been okay with. 60 bucks was like, wish you would have called me to say, "Is 60 bucks okay?" Like, but this was back, like, I didn't even have a cell phone at the time. So I was a little uh untechnological in those days, I'd say. So I didn't get a cell phone until the following year. Yeah, so I started reading it later that night after he left and couldn't put it down. I mean, it just I had no idea what I was reading, and it was just couldn't stop reading it though. Like, I couldn't stop.
Do you remember what the first thing you read was, or like anything in there that piqued your interest originally?
I don't. I remember just kind of just going through random and just kind of, and I'm just like, "What is this?" Like, I just didn't know what I was reading. It was so confused and so like, and it was a lot of it was just so over my head. And there's parts of it where it's talking about science, and there's parts where it was talking about history and things that I kind of understood. But then also there's parts that was talking about God, and I was just like, "What is like?" It kind of did to me at the time, like an alien Bible was like, kind of a good description. It kind of made sense, and I just had no idea what it was, and so I went through this process probably about a week or two, where I was just like, I couldn't stop reading it, even though, like, I don't think really any of it really stuck with me. Like, I was more of just like, I would read it with, like, just this feeling of confusion. Like, I wanna try to understand this, but it's not I'm not understanding it. And there were some parts in the science parts where I was just kind of like, "Okay, this is really interesting." It's I thought it was really fascinating that they were tying because I was also really interested in philosophy. I took a philosophy class in college. I just kind of fell in love with philosophy and, like, deep questions about time and space and what those things actually were, and just like asking these deep profound questions, right, that we don't normally think about on a day-to-day basis, or that you don't really have conversations with in normal everyday life, right? But I loved thinking about those kinds of things, and so I was like getting little glimpses of those things as I'm reading through here, and so I really loved the science and philosophy that I was reading, and so, like, I started looking up on the internet about the Urantia book, right? And trying to, like, learn who wrote it, and where did what is this, you know, what's the story behind it type of thing. And, I ended up stumbling across, Pato Bonton, who you recently just had on your show. That was a really great episode, buddy. I love
Yeah,
that
thanks
one.
for hooking that up.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, and so I reached out to him and started talking to him, and I was just like, "I what is" "What's the Rancher book? Like, you talk about it a lot. I just found it. I don't understand." And, I don't think I told him my experience or anything, but I just was just kind of asking him questions, and he was, like, really I mean, I didn't really know who he was. I didn't know he was, like, a big famous reggae singer, I guess he just kept coming up, his name kept coming up, and he was open and talked to me, and, we kinda became friends, and then I found out that he was this musician. I started listening to his music and then following him on Facebook and seeing that he's traveling around doing all these tours and all this stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool." And, and so I'm kind of learning about the Urantia book. I feel like I just made a new friend who I think's pretty freaking cool, and he's kinda giving me some insights and stuff, and he had a Facebook group and kinda pointed me to some other Facebook groups with other people that read the Urantia book, and so I'm kinda mingling in there just trying to understand. And then there was that day where I found out that the whole last part was about Jesus.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and that scared the shit out of me, to be honest. I was like, "Wait a minute, is this some kind of a religion? What is this?" Now I'm even more confused, right? Because, I had this standoffish thing with religion, and I felt pretty comfortable with where I was at, with, how I understood religion, and just didn't wanna get involved with religion, and you know and so, yeah, it just kinda scared me, and so then I started asking Pato and his wife Antoinette some questions about, uh, what is this book about? Why does it talk about Jesus? Is this some kind of religion? I read, there's this other book out there that calls it, like, a cult. Is this, like, some kinda cult? Like, what is the and so
Mhm.
now I'm, kind of trying to reintroduce myself to what I'm learning, right? And, they're like, "Well, maybe you should start before you, dive into reading, the Jesus papers, maybe you should start with reading the Adam and Eve papers." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, because in my mind, I've heard the story of Adam and Eve, right? And, it doesn't make any sense to me, and so it's like, "Okay, so this is gonna be able to clear it up for me pretty easily." Adam and Eve is gonna be all, some kinda mystical or woo-woo stuff, and I'm gonna be able to see through it. And, so I read that, and I was like, "Wow, that was really interesting," and that actually makes a lot of sense, even though I still didn't fully understand because I didn't have, the
Mhm.
big picture yet, right? I just had
Mhm.
this one story, but it was like, that makes more sense than anything I've ever heard about surrounding, this idea in Adam and Eve. And so then I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna dive in, and I'm gonna read the Jesus papers. I'm gonna just see what this is about, see what
Mhm.
this" you know? And so I did, and, that forever changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something that happens, and it's this sort of slow creep where you're getting these little nuggets of truth that are resonating internally. And it's really only in retrospect that you recognize these things. Like, first of all, this whole trajectory of having that experience and getting to this point is really amazing. And I'm assuming you're not really recognizing it at the time,
Oh,
but do you think you would have been able to receive the book and the information and stick with it if you didn't have that experience?
no, not at all. Not at all. It wouldn't have been anything that I would have been interested in.
Mm.
Um, I mean, and here's the thing, like, so hindsight, like you said, like as these things are happening, you're not really recognizing what happens. But now that this is like 15 years ago, and I can look back on it, I see a bigger pattern that's even way bigger than what I just told you. Like I told you, I was like, really depressed, right? I had actually wrote a song. I was working with this group, and I was helping them promote their music and doing some management type stuff for them and that kind of stuff. And one of the members of the group, me and him became really close, and he actually needed a place to live, and he came to live with me for a year. And so we set up a recording studio at my house, and there was one day where I was like, I wanted to write a song and have them perform it. Actually, I was gonna try to perform it because I'm like watching them do it, and I'm like, I can do this, maybe, I want to try. And so I wrote this song, and then I tried to do it, and I couldn't. I just don't have the chops. It came out, so it's like I hear it in my head, and there's a way that I want it to sound, but it won't come out of my mouth sounding like the way I want it to sound. And he's like watching me do this, and like he's really, really talented. And so I think he was being nice, but I know on the inside he was probably just cringing, right? And finally I was like, maybe you can try to sing this for me. Well, anyways, the first line of the song that I wrote, and this is like shortly before I had my experience. And like I said, I was like in a really bad way. I was really, really depressed. I even tried to and I don't like to talk about that, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that, but it is a part of the story, so I just want to put that out there. But I was in a really bad place, and the first line of this song was it was "Dear Lord, heal me or kill me." That was, and I honestly, like, when I look back, it's like that was my cry for help that was
Mm.
answered by this experience that I had like a month or two later. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and I never recognized any of that at the time. That was like years later where I started putting the pieces together, and it all started to make sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So looking back, what do you think that experience was? Do you have any opinion, especially now with your knowledge of the Urantia book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that experience was um the 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 down grasp of divinity um to try to help and save a person who needed it. And I strongly believe in the concept of acceptance or denial, and we've talked about this a few times. And there was that moment, right, where they were like, you can let go, you can let go. They gave me the choice. It
Mm.
wasn't anything I had to accept, but it was because that I accepted it, and then I chose to go along with this experience that was happening and not run away from it or, decline it. And maybe it had happened to me, the week before or 2 weeks before or a month before. I don't know. I don't remember anything like that happening, but I often wonder if there's like other times in my life where like they've tried to reach out to me and I just
Mm.
turned it down or turned it away, and then just didn't ever think of it again, type of thing. And so that's what I look at it now, like, because after reading the Jesus Papers, and I like I said, it changed my life forever. And I read them, with just tears coming down my face, and I couldn't stop reading. I read it, all the way through, and I don't know, like a week maybe. And I remember just like I was like laying in my bed or sitting, and I was taking the book everywhere I went. Like if we were going to the park or something, taking our kids to the park, or like I would take the book with me, and I'm like reading the book everywhere I went. Like I just couldn't put it down. And yeah, and after I read the Jesus Papers, I was like, this is something I've been missing my entire life. Like, why have I been so reluctant to, try to understand who Jesus was, or any of this stuff, right? And so from that point on, like I said, it changed me, and I decided that I I wanted to understand this better. I wanted to learn what God's will was and how I can do better. My depression like went away, and I started having this spiritual awakening that, I mean, I can't describe it as anything other than like the most profound. I mean, the spiritual awakening was more profound than that experience, because my spiritual awakening lasted for months. That experience was like 3 minutes, but that experience led to my spiritual awakening 6, 7, 8 months later, however long it was. And my spiritual awakening was probably the most profound 3 months of my life. And it was a pretty amazing thing. And
So what was that 3 months that you're saying was this the spiritual awakening?
yeah, that's also really hard to describe. I mean, it's a lot of it was really, really blissful, and me opening my mind to the universe and this new reality, basically. A lot of it was traumatizing in the fact that I was shedding a lot of things that I had believed my entire life, or thought I believed, or questioned, or um, and the more that it went on. So I often, when I try to describe my spiritual awakening, is I kind of look at it as like an uphill climb, and then there's like a peak, and then a downward, like coming down off of this high, right? And it was about 3 months. So there's like the month of going up, there's the month of just that amazing. I mean, everything just felt so blissful in the clarity. I felt like I understood the entire universe. Like I just felt like I understood everything. Like, and it was really weird because people were noticing that I was changing and I was acting different, and they would ask me questions, and it was like I just felt like I always had like the perfect answer. Like I always wish I could get back to that point where I was then, because that was like, honestly, that was like my best self that I've ever seen, and I've kind of strived to try to get back to that point. And I think a part of that is, you're being shown like a potential. These are the potentials, there's the uphill and there's the potential of
Hmm.
possibility. And then, you're coming back down to reality. Now you got to earn your way there, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't just get to go there. You don't just get there, right? You got to
Yeah.
earn your way there.
Yeah.
But, it's like they showed me, something, and
Yeah, it's like you're getting a taste of universe reality and the beauty of that, but you can't just stay there because the reality is we're here and there are
yeah.
these ups and downs that we have to deal with.
Well, it's something that you've got to earn, and the perfection hunger, and you've got to strive to, get better, and to learn God's will and do better, and to do God's will. You don't just automatically get like this you can't go from level 1 to level 10 without going through all the other levels. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, for sure. So did you find on that, you described as going up, but then there's this down thing. So what was that? What was
down
that
thing.
like?
Um, it was kind of scary and a little traumatizing because I like, you initially feel like you did something wrong, right? And it wasn't anything that I understood at the time. It's all hindsight that I look at it and I, see like this pattern of how it happened and why it happened and everything. But at the time, it was like I did something wrong. Now,
Why am I not staying in this joyful,
yeah,
blissful
yeah.
place? Yeah.
Am I not worthy? Am I not good
Hmm.
enough? What did I do? Things like that. And it was a good thing that I found like a community, the Urantia Book community through Pato and these different groups on Facebook and stuff. And so like I'm reading like other people's thoughts. I'm sharing with some other people. I'm reading more of the Urantia Book. People are pointing me in the right direction, like, oh, you should read this passage, or you should read this paper, or you
Hmm.
should do. And so a lot of those things like really helped me kind of understand what it, what was happening, and there's a couple people that were really key in that, and I actually, I there was one person I called my spiritual aunt, and another person I called my spiritual mother. Um, if they're listening to this, they know who they are. And just yeah, and so it wasn't too traumatizing for very long. Once I kind of understood what was happening, what was going on. But it did come to a point where I fell so in love with Jesus and um God, really, uh, that I wanted to consecrate my life to God and to do the will of God and completely, change from this secular minded person that I was 9 months before. Um,
Mm.
and it was kind of interesting that it's about 9 months too. That, um, and and so for my birthday, my wife at the time, my ex-wife, she was going to buy me a mountain bike, and I said, I don't think I want a mountain bike. Will you just use that money and rent me a car? I want to go down and meet Pato Bonton, and I want him to baptize me. And on August 4th, 2011, that's me and my friend Bob drove down about 6 hours to go to a Pato Bonton concert and meet up with Pato and have him baptize me. And yeah, I look at that as the day that and it's it was something that was already made up in my mind. I don't feel like I needed to be baptized or anything like that. I've never been baptized in my entire life, but I felt like it was just something that really meant a lot to me personally. And so I wanted to do it as like me making a commitment and a pact with God, thank you for healing me from my depression. And I, just
Yeah,
wanted
it's a
to.
symbolic.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And I mean, what a gift. I mean, it's really amazing. And that's the thing that I'm trying to do, I guess, with this podcast is to, you spoke about the down grasp. So there is a down grasp of spirit that is real, but it takes the up, right? Like
Right.
there has to be, you have to reach out. So
Right.
that's my experience too. I had a situation when I had several situations in childhood, but one was when I was 12 and I had this really sincere reaching out towards God. And there was a response, and the response is real. And I think it's really important for people to realize that this is possible and that these things can happen, and they might be initially scary. You might feel fear or confusion for sure, because
Yeah.
it's completely changing worldview and perspective. But it's I think it's really crucial, especially at this time in our planetary history, for people to stop denying these things or just being completely asleep to it. Wake up to these types of experiences as a real possibility, and not a possibility for other people, a possibility for you, that you can personally open up to these things. And that's one of the things that's really amazing about the Urantia book, is it provides this context and the perspective. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the Urantia book and its importance broadly and to you personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this like what you're saying is that downreach, like they're reaching down trying to help us, and it's so important for us to be willing and accepting to reach back up to them, because like a lot of people, I think, why aren't they helping me, why aren't they, but it doesn't work that way. It's not like they just come into your life and do magical acts. Like, yes, I might have had that experience that was like a magical act that led me down this path, but it's not the way that it works all the time, right? We've talked about this a lot, where your experience, started at a very young age, and it's been kind of slow and steady and constant throughout your life. And my experience is more of like a whirlwind that happened in like a series of like big events. And we've often talked about like, what would you rather have? And like you said, well, I wish I had like a big major experience. And I've also often said, well, I wish mine was slow and steady, and it's like, but I think that these experiences are tailored for what you need and who you are, and what you're accepting and what you're not accepting. And so, and I think the Rancher book, it plays a big role, but I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think people can have genuine experiences with God, with these universe personalities, with themselves and through themselves, and getting to know God without the Urantia book. I see it all the time.
Mhm.
Like, there's plenty of people I've met in this world where I'm just like, that person sees God, and I don't think that person's ever read the Urantia book. It's not like it's a requirement or anything, but it is a guidebook. It is something that, I mean, it's a revelation, right? That's pure and
Mhm.
simple is what it says it is, and that's what it is. It reveals information that we didn't have before. And Jesus came here and he delivered a revelation that was information that we didn't have before Jesus came here,
Mhm.
right? And now that revelation is being updated again. And that's what it is. And this time they wrote it down in a book, because what happened last time they said it, but
Right.
so this, we can't I mean, there's people that are going to try to say that, and I've heard it before. People are going to say that the Urantia book is from the devil, and it's, and we've talked about these on the Imperfections of Days podcast, where, people talk about the orbs, like they're, it's the same thing. And these are just, well, I wish people would be more open minded, but everyone is where they're at. And, I often say, like, there's many paths to the mountain.
Mhm.
There's many paths up the mountain, but there's only one top of the mountain. And everyone's on different paths. And I just, I guess my message would be read the Urantia book with an open mind. Give it a chance. Like,
Hmm.
you can sit here and say all you want about the Urantia book and have never read it, or say all you want about Christianity, like I did my entire life, and said, "Oh, that's not real. That's just a bunch of hokum. That's all fake." My entire
Hmm.
life, and then, yeah, I, I was wrong, but it's like I think that there's just like this fear mechanism where people are just maybe they think they're comfortable in where they're at and they just don't want to know, and so it's just easier for them to just dismiss stuff. But yeah, just be open minded and look into these things with an open mind, because and I think we're seeing it around the world is like these things happening in our skies, and people are waking up and everything that's happening. I mean, you can't deny all the evidence that's around you, and so just open up and let yourself be a little bit more open minded and look into it. And like Corey says, I really love what Corey says. You don't even have to tell anybody. It's not like you have to go
Right.
proclaim to the world, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Just do it on your own. And it's not like you have to,
Yeah.
if you're a self-proclaimed atheist and you've spent years of your life arguing with people all over the internet about how atheism is the right way, doesn't mean you can't read the Urantia book or look into
Read
Christianity,
anything. Like,
or
yeah.
yeah, or deep into some of these other things that you might completely be dismissive of. You don't even have to tell anybody. Just maybe just try it with an open mind and see if something resonates with you, or see if you have some kind of an experience of your own, or you just never know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. I understand why people look at the world in the way it is and become cynical. But this, for me, is why the Urantia book is so important, is because it provides the context for why things are way off the rails here.
Right.
Because that's the fact. In universe reality, we occupy this planet that happens to be way off the rails for specific reasons. So, and when you have some understanding of that, uh it it helps you of, I don't know, having, I don't know if sympathy for ourselves is the right way to say that, but it provides you with a logical explanation. And the important thing is these things are personally testable. So the experience that you had, the experiences that I've had, these are available to everybody, but you have to personally make some choices. It can be conscious or unconscious, but you have to personally align your will in some way with God's will, or get yourself more in tune with that, and then things start to happen for you. And further to that, when they do, like you said, you go through this spiritual awakening. It's like, oh my God, behold, all things are becoming new. And you are in this place that it is really difficult to explain or articulate, because it's almost like we do not have the language for these things. We literally don't have the words to explain what is going on. It's just this internal feeling, or even these intuitions, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know how we keep inventing all these new words for scientific reasons, these, the whatever, medical terms, or different medicines that we're creating, or we create all these different words and all these different languages and lingo that if you listen to a scientist talk and you're kind of a layman in science, you're not going to understand what they're saying. They're using all these new words that they've had to invent to try to explain all these new things and all this stuff that they're finding. And that's kind of what we need for spirituality and some of these things, because we don't have the words to like properly describe and explain a lot of these things. And I think that's becoming an issue a little.
Yeah. So there's something that I wanted to get into with you. I'm not sure the exact way to do this, but you're very science minded. You like science and history, astronomy, so much so that you started the Urantia Book Science and History group on Facebook. You make videos on your YouTube channel about these things. And I have this frustration with science itself, or this, there's something about it that has to do with constantly needing an authority to tell you what's real, and we just defer to scientists to tell us what to think and what to believe and what's real. And I think a real there's a real problem with that, in the sense that we can all be scientists to a certain extent, right? We
Right.
have to be willing to personally question and look into things. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts of that, and specifically where science and physics is at right
Well, I'd
now?
say it's the same for for religion and spirituality. That's kind of the way that I used to look at that, is like, if these things are true and God is real, why do you need somebody preaching all this to a bunch of people when we're all religionists. We can all experience this. We can all see God in our own lives. And so for me, it's the same thing with science is we have a tendency as a species to have like a mob type mentality or a tribal mentality, right? And part of that tribal mentality is always trying to defer to a leader, somebody who we think is better than the rest of the people or smarter than the rest of the people or in some way fit to lead the rest of the people. And I think that's why we do that um we give uh scientific authority in some sense, especially with like, a lot of the recent things with like COVID and all that stuff that's happened, but we won't get in the weeds on that. But I think you're right, is that it is something that is, we can all be scientists. We can all be spiritual beings. We can all be philosophers. We can be all these things. And we don't really need leaders to tell us what is right and what is wrong. Um, I think one of the things that the Urantia book really kind of hammers home is that the idea of teachers and students, right? And so the teacher is the person who's like one step above you, right? But they're also the student of the person who's one step above them, right? And you're the student of them, but you're also the teacher of the person who's one step below you. And so like this concept of being teachers and students, right? So you're learning from those who are have more knowledge on or more understanding of a certain topic than you do, and you're teaching that to the ones below you. And it's, instead of having like one person trying to teach everybody and tell everybody this is the way, because that's not how it works. And I mean, as we've seen, a lot of times they're way off the mark.
Hmm.
And and we have these things in physics and in science and in astronomy. We call them the standard model or the accepted model or things like that. But who's it accepted by? Right? Like, I don't accept that.
Hmm.
Just because you said that's the accepted model means everyone has to accept it, or that's the way, and and you see things that have even been almost, basically proven. And then it takes so long for that standard model to actually crumble and get replaced. Uh, when it's been proven wrong, that it becomes more of dogma and um and and that's not how science is. That's not the way science
Exactly.
should be.
Yeah, it's not true science.
Right? Exactly. It's not true science. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to dive into the UFO UAP subject as well, because I think this is in that same vein. It's relevant because I think one of the things that this is showing us is how easy it is for society to be manipulated, and how a control structure can, I guess, I don't know if manifest is the right word, but if you deeply look into the UFO subject and how a stigma was created around it, and that got so ingrained in society that people were afraid to even talk about it. So you have people having these very real experiences, like, your experience, and they're made to feel afraid or crazy for talking about it. Like, that itself is so wrong and holds us back from moving forward and moving closer to truth. I think that's one of the things that, as we're now in the age of disclosure, right? I think that's the real thing that's being disclosed, is lies and sophistry, and how
Mhm.
that affects us individually and collectively.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, and I think um, it almost seems like a battle between good and evil. So as Urantia Book students, we know about the rebellion, and we understand that um, you know what what has happened and what is taking place, and you can almost see like this pattern of it that exists in our society that's been built up over thousands and thousands of years, and it still exists in our society. It's these effects and these ripple like effects, and I don't fully understand it, and I don't know, like, there's these ideas of certain families that have, like, all this power through hundreds of, not thousands of years, and they just keep and I don't really know enough to really speak on that, but you can almost see like that pattern is it just keeps persisting, right? Like there's something like an evil or a rot, something that's rotten that exists on this world that's decaying and that needs to go. And I think what we're seeing is that being exposed, right? It's we can't make it go away unless we know it's there, right? If you've got like you've got a pimple, right? You need to get rid of the pimple. You can't get rid of the pimple if you don't know it's there, right? And so like it's like something like that, right? We've
Mm,
got to get rid of this blotch or this evil or whatever it is. There's lots of different things you can call it, but whatever it is, this decay, this rot that exists on our planet, we got to get rid of that so we can really grow and really move forward into more of a harmony and more of a balance and more of the way that it's supposed to be.
yeah. Yeah. We're in this really interesting time, which I never thought we'd see in my lifetime, where the darkness is being exposed. It's almost like this, like a pressure cooker, where it's been here so long and it's so pernicious, and it's getting to affect so many people. right? And that's when we have these periods, as we know from the Urantia book. It talks about planetary emergencies, right? There are these times where, so our world is lovingly fostered. There are angelic hosts, there are these beings, entities, whatever you want to say, that are outside of our range of vision. We are not alone in the universe. Um, we are taken care of, but they can only act in certain ways and in certain situations, right? There are rules that govern our universe and our world.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how, like, for me, this UFO subject, UAP subject, ties in so hugely to nuclear weapons and war. And unfortunately, war is this machine that's driving our society right now. So something has to give. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you have
I,
any thoughts on that, but
well, I think more than war, I think it's the profit motive, right? Like people just want to control the wealth and get more wealth and build, you know, as much as they can. And so that leads to people are so greedy that they're willing to, go to war because of that greed, right? And it's just that overwhelming profit motive. And I mean that's something that most people aren't like that. Most people have no desire to see a world that's like that, but there are a few who seem to have so much power and so much wealth, and they just keep driving that home, and keep driving that force, and it's out of control. I mean, but there's only so much, and only so long that something like that can really last, right? Like, and so I think we are in the age of where all these things are being exposed, right? And then now it's just I don't know how fast it's gonna be, like, if it's gonna be in our lifetime when we actually see it start to get cleaned up, or if it's if that's in the next couple generations, or when that's gonna be, but definitely, I think we're if you look at my thing I was talking about earlier of the uphill, then the downhill, we're kind of like or Gary's V. We hit the bottom, now the
yeah,
only way is up,
right. Yeah. It is it gets messy, obviously, when all this stuff is being exposed, but that's exactly what I think is happening right now. Is the lies and the sophistry are being exposed in a way that that's not happened, at least not for a very, very long time. What's your thoughts on the topic of disclosure in general?
Oh, man, this is a tough one. I mean, I know that we're not alone. I already know. So for me, like disclosure doesn't mean much. I want everybody else to know, but I'm so disheartened by these people who are supposed to be bringing information forward who aren't really bringing much. It kind of, it seems weird to me that, they're willing to basically what they're saying is we're willing to come out as a whistleblower. We're willing to put our life on the line and we're willing to say this. But we're only going to say this and this and this, and we're not going to say this, this, and this, and this. We're going to say, we can't tell you that. We can't tell you that. We know that, but we can't talk about that. There's something that seems really, really fishy to me about that. Like it just that it doesn't seem Right, and so it's starting to make me think that maybe these people are being allowed to say certain things and they're not being allowed to say other things, and a lot of them aren't firsthand witnesses. A lot of them are hearing of this stuff, they're seeing documents that are saying this stuff, and so maybe, maybe they're doing it, maybe they're aware of what's being happened, or maybe they're not, but maybe they're being part of the psyop, intentionally or unintentionally. They're being fed a little bit of information. Here's what you can tell. Here's what you can't. I don't know. It's so hard to. I don't know. What do you think about that? I go back and
I
forth.
Yeah, so I think what this is exposing is how the secrecy is maintained, right? Through compartmentalization, where people only have a little piece of the puzzle. So they can't know they don't have access to all the information. They might have some specific experience, but what does that mean? And then when people have signed NDAs or they're in the military and they're going to lose their job or worse if they speak, it's very easy to keep people in control. And, the US specific, like the West, I mean, we're a national security state, essentially, right? It's all
Yeah.
about national security first. And that means, well, uh, we have to maintain the secrecy to keep for your own benefit, just to keep you safe, right? And it's like, no, there are fundamental truths to reality that should not remain hidden or secret. But the positive thing is it's not a secret if you're willing to ask, if you want to know. Like we talked about
Right.
the upgrasp and the downgrasp. And I think that's why, say, with the orb phenomenon, anyone is able to experience it, but it's under certain conditions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really about what you do with this. It's leading us down a spiritual path, because that's what we are called to grow spiritually, and we can all choose that individually. But when more and more people start to choose this, then collectively things in the world look better. But yeah, lies and secrecy are such a huge problem right now. And that's really what's being disclosed. We can
Yeah.
think it's like aliens and craft, but it's
Yeah.
really about universal truths.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that point is I look at the orb phenomenon and the UFO disclosure thing as two very separate things. And I think a lot of times those get thrown into the same thing, right? Like that's all part of the UFO or UAP, whatever. But I think those are two very separate and different things. And what some of these pilots may have been seeing, like the Tic Tac or things like that, like I don't think that that was an orb. I think that was more of like kind of with like the Greer camp on that is that's more probably like a man-made or something. I don't know though. Like I don't know. I wish I was in the know, but all I know is what I've heard all these people talking about and everything that everybody's saying, and it's like to me it's I listen to it all, but I don't know what to make of it, and I don't know what to believe or who to believe. And yeah,
Yeah.
but I do believe certain people, and there's certain people like Chris Bledsoe and other people like yourself and Corey and or, our friend Jeremy who are having these experiences with the orb phenomenon, and and other people who my good friend Bob who introduced me to the Urantia Book unwittingly, has also had these experiences, and when they talk about their interactions with them, like being playful and being I know what those are. I know what's going on there, and so like that all makes perfect sense to me. But when it comes to like these government whistleblowers and what the government's saying and all this other stuff, like I don't really know what's going on
Sure.
there. The
Yeah,
water's so muddy. Yeah,
those waters are so muddy, but
yeah,
it's the consciousness piece. And this is the thing that it seems that there are a lot of people, whoever this, these people at the top are, this is the thing that they don't want us to know, is how we have this agency and this power within ourselves.
yeah,
We have this divine spark within us that we can choose to connect with. And again, bringing it back to the Urantia book, it provides context and details for this, for all this, all these things. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about imperfections of days, because I think this is really funny, because for a long time, right, we're friends. I don't know what year we met, maybe
Ooh,
2021, around
it's
that time, I
couple
think.
few. Yeah, it's been a few years. Yeah,
Yeah. And we were feeling this desire, like some call to action, trying to figure out what our service is, and this idea of doing a podcast, and how after one thing leading to another, I've started my channel, you have your channel, and we thought we would be doing this podcast, Imperfections of Days, which we are, but it's now become a group thing, which has been really, really fun.
yeah, yeah.
Just wanted to get your thoughts on that a little bit.
Well, I remember it a little bit different than you, because I remember you trying to you I was already doing the Ranch Book Science and History videos, and but I felt like you were trying to find something, and you you kept sending me podcast episodes, and you're like, you got to check out this podcast episode, and like I never really watched or listened to podcast episodes before I met you, and you started sending me to all the time, and so I started listening to them at work, and so then I was like, you should do a podcast. And I was really trying to talk you into doing a podcast. And I think as a part of it, I was like, all right, I'll do it with you, just to try to motivate you to do it. And then you like just, you know, like we kind of talked about it kind of, but like out of nowhere, I remember you just bought all the equipment, and then you're just like, you just
I know
launched
what I
like a
got to do.
rocket. Yeah, launched like a rocket, and you started doing 11:11, and then, and then we started doing the, imperfections of days, but once you started doing the 11:11, I was just like I was just so thankful, because it was just like, Shane found what this this is this is so awesome, and you're such a natural, you're so good at doing this, and I love
Thanks.
listening to all your podcast episodes, and you have really cool guests, and I love the way that you do it, to where you really ask good questions, and you let them, really speak, and it's just it's a great podcast, man, and it suits you well, and I love it. And then as for imperfections of days, we kind of really didn't know what we were doing. We started with hosting the TLDR after show, and that was just our first episode, and we kind of didn't really know what we're doing. And then we did like a second episode, and then we did that third episode with the group people, when everyone broke in, and our, security wasn't all that great. And then it kind of evolved from there. And I like what it's evolved into. I think we're still kind of finding our footing with that, but I think it's turning into something very serviceable and good, and I like where we're headed with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun too. Yeah, and I
It's a
watch them back myself, and it's I laugh. Yeah, they're fun to watch too.
yeah. And thanks for the kind words. You've definitely been extremely helpful in getting me to this point of whatever the hell this is that
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
doing.
so glad you did it because, like, there was a point where I was a little worried that, like, you weren't gonna do it and like it wasn't gonna happen, and then the next thing I know, you're just like I said, you launched like a rocket, and so then yeah, I'm so glad that you did that first episode with Angie and just took off, and it's all been
Yeah,
awesome.
well, your story was one of the things that really got me thinking about it deeply because I wanted to share these personal experiences of spiritual awakening that people are having because we should be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you finally opened up about it. I'm hoping it wasn't that bad, and because
No,
to me, and I get it. I get the fear around not
yeah,
wanting to open yourself up in that way, but it's really incredible that this thing can happen to people, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people who haven't told anybody about it. So hopefully it gets more people to be willing to have these conversations and talk about their spiritual experiences.
yeah, and I think, like, that's the way that it's meant to be. I think on a normal world, uh, that these things are you learn more about these in your upbringing, and these things are more talked about and understood, and then on this world it's just like a stigma, right? And it's just like you get made afraid to talk about any kind of weird experiences that's outside this secular norm that we've set up, that's like basically like a box. It's almost like a little prison that we put ourselves into, or we've been put into, um and
Yeah.
don't go outside of that box. If you go outside of that box, you're a weirdo, or and that's not right. That's not the way that the world's supposed to be. And so I like I said, I was nervous about doing this, but I'm really glad that I did. And I do really hope and pray that, it helps somebody. And if you think I'm crazy, well, then you think I'm crazy. It don't matter.
You're crazy, but for other reasons.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to say?
No, just God lives within you, and the Mother Spirit lives on the outside of you. And so you've got God the Father on the inside, God the Mother all around you, and it's all right there. And then you've got all these other beings that exist, and they're all there just waiting for us to reach up to them, and and or reach into them, and they want us, they want to do good, they want the best for us, they want to help us, and they want to be there, and we just gotta accept it and accept their help, and keep keep trucking along and trying to make this world a better place. And
Yeah.
we're getting there slowly but surely, but eventually we'll get there.
Keep trucking down that spiritual path.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
also watch our other podcast, Imperfections of Days. You left that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and watch all the rest of Shane's episodes, man. He's got a
Thanks,
I
buddy.
was actually thinking about it today, because I was like, that night that original experience happened in my garage, I was like, yeah, it was probably about 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, I wonder if it was at 11:11. Like, if that
Oh,
experience
yeah.
like happened at 11:11, what did that mean? Like, I didn't have any concept of time, so I don't have no idea, but that would be
Let's
so
go with it.
freaking cool.
Hell yeah, it would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. All right,
Yeah.
buddy.
All
This was
right.
great. Thanks for
Yeah.
finally telling your story. Thanks for doing it here.
Yeah. Well,
feel
thanks
honored.
for having me on and making the space for me to tell my story and making it so easy and comfortable to tell my story. I love it.
All right, brother.
All right. Love you, man.
Love you.
Peace.
Peace.